What if I told you that the most expensive, most realistic, most perfect lure in your tackle box is the exact reason you're not catching trophy fish? Think about that for a second. You spend all this money and time trying to perfectly match the hatch, only to have the biggest fish in the lake completely ignore you. In this video, we're going to explore a radical idea that the only way to catch a truly giant, educated fish is to use the one lure they are absolutely supposed to hate. I promise you, by the end of this, you'll look at that weird, dusty, neon-colored lure you never throw in a completely new light. It might just be the key you've been missing. So let me ask you, have you ever blamed the lure when the fish aren't biting? You might be blaming the wrong one. For generations, we've been taught a core set of fishing rules. Use natural colors in clear water, use smaller baits when the bite is tough, be quiet, be subtle, and above all, match what the fish are eating. And for the most part, that advice works for catching fish. But we're not talking about just any fish. We're talking about the old, wise, and cynical trophies, the ones that have seen every Senko, every silver spoon, and every perfectly crawled jig 1,000 times. We get stuck in our ways because these methods gave us success in the past. We develop confidence baits and rarely stray from them. The problem is, on pressured waters, hundreds of other anglers have the exact same confidence baits. We're all showing the fish the same predictable movie, and the big ones have stopped buying tickets. Let's start with the problem of the perfect presentation. Picture this. It's a Saturday morning on a popular lake. You pull up to a promising-looking point. You and 10 boats before you have probably thrown a green pumpkin jig or a shaky headworm at that exact spot. The smaller, younger, dumber fish might still hit it. But that 7-pounder, she's seen it. She saw it yesterday. She saw it last weekend. To her, that perfect lure isn't food anymore. It's noise. It's a potential threat. Or even worse, it's just plain boring. This is the core of what we call lure conditioning. Fish, especially long-living predators, learn to associate certain shapes, colors, and vibrations with danger, or, at the very least, something that isn't worth their energy. Your favorite lure, the one that caught you 50 fish 5 years ago, might now be the most easily ignored object in the entire lake for the fish you actually want to catch. It's a tough pill to swallow. So, how do we break this conditioning? This is where the hated lure comes in. What makes a lure hated? It's something that completely breaks the mold of what the fish are used to seeing. Think about the ugliest thing in your box. Maybe it's a giant crankbait painted in a ridiculous fire tiger pattern. Maybe it's a topwater lure that's obnoxiously loud, with multiple clacking parts. Or maybe it's a swim bait in a color that doesn't exist in nature, like bright bubblegum pink or electric blue. These are the lures we buy on a whim and then feel too embarrassed to actually use. We think, there's no way a fish would eat this. And that is precisely the point. We're not trying to get them to eat it in the traditional sense. We are trying to provoke a completely different response, one that has nothing to do with hunger. The goal is to be so different, so alien, that the fish's brain can't just file it away as another one of those things. Now we need to get inside the mind of a trophy fish. A 10-pound bass or a 50-inch muskie didn't get that big by being stupid. They are survivors. They are masters of their environment. Their daily life isn't just about finding their next meal. It's about conserving energy, defending territory, and maintaining dominance. A small, easy meal is great, but it's not always the top priority. Think of a big, old buck deer. He's not just wandering around nibbling on grass. He's patrolling his area, watching for threats, and ready to fight off any challenges. A trophy fish is the exact same way. They have a prime feeding spot, a favorite piece of cover, and they will aggressively defend it from intruders. This territorial instinct is often far more powerful than their feeding instinct, especially when they aren't actively hunting for a meal. This is the emotional trigger we are aiming for. The hated lure is the key to unlocking that territorial aggression. When you throw a natural-looking lure, you are asking the fish a question. Are you hungry? More often than not, especially with a big, well-fed fish, the answer is no. But when you rip a giant, rattling, obnoxiously colored crankbait through their living room, you are no longer asking a question. You are making a statement. You are screaming, I am here, I am weird, and I do not belong. This doesn't trigger the feeding part of their brain. It triggers the fight or flight part. And a dominant predator at the top of the food chain, in its own territory, rarely chooses flight. It chooses to eliminate the threat. It's a pure instinctual reaction strike. The fish isn't thinking about calories or protein, it's thinking about destruction. It wants that noisy, ugly intruder gone, and the only way it knows how is to attack it. Let me paint you a clearer picture. Imagine a peaceful, quiet neighborhood. Everyone is minding their own business. Then suddenly a clown on a unicycle, blaring an air horn and juggling chainsaws, comes riding down the middle of the street. Nobody is going to invite him in for dinner. They're not going to ask him if he's lost. The first reaction is, what is that, and how do we make it stop? That is your hated lure. It's the clown on the unicycle. Everything else the fish have seen that day is just a normal car, driving by, easily ignored. Your lure needs to be the one thing they simply cannot ignore. It's an invasive species, an anomaly, a disruption to their entire world. And a trophy fish sees itself as the king of that world, the one responsible for restoring order. The strike isn't about food, it's an act of eviction. This brings us to a crucial point about lure properties. It's not just about a weird color, it's the total package of sensory overload. Sound is a massive factor. Most natural bait fish are relatively quiet. But a lure with multiple, oversized ball bearings in it that clack and rattle, that's not a sound a big fish hears often unless it's another big fish crunching on a crawfish or a bluegill. That sound can signify a competitor, a threat. Then there's water displacement. A huge, wide wobbling plug pushes a massive amount of water, creating a vibration that a big fish can feel in its lateral line from yards away. It's a signature that is completely different from the subtle flick of a baitfish's tail. When you combine an unnatural color, a loud alien sound, and a powerful disruptive vibration, you create a perfect storm of annoyance that a dominant predator cannot tolerate. Let's talk about a real-world example. I was fishing a super clear lake, one where everyone says you have to use fluorocarbon line and tiny, natural-colored finesse baits. The book says that's the only way to get bit. I spent 4 hours throwing a drop shot with a natural goby imitation and caught absolutely nothing. I could see good fish on my electronics, but they wanted no part of it. Out of sheer frustration, I tied on the ugliest lure in my box, a 2-ounce chartreuse and hot pink spinnerbait with giant clashing silver and gold willow blades. It looked like something from a cartoon. On my third cast, burning it just under the surface, a bass that had to be over 8 pounds came from 10 feet away and absolutely tried to murder it. It wasn't a subtle bite, it was pure violence. Why? Because she had seen 1,000 drop shots, but she had likely never seen that monstrosity before. So why did that work? Let's break it down. The finesse presentation was asking the "Are you hungry?" question. The answer was no. That giant, ugly spinnerbait didn't ask anything. It barged into her territory, flashing and thumping. It was a blatant challenge. In that ultra-clear water, she could see it from a long way off. It was so big, so loud, and so out of place that it represented an immediate and pressing threat to her dominance. It might have been a competitor. It might have been a threat to the young she was guarding. Or it might have just been so profoundly irritating that she had to destroy it. The exact reason doesn't matter. What matters is that the wrong lure provoked a reaction that the right lure couldn't. This is a pattern you'll see repeated over and over again if you're brave enough to try it. Another classic rule, we're told, is to downsize when the fishing is tough. Go smaller, lighter, slower. And again, this can work for getting more bites from smaller fish. But a trophy fish often has the opposite mindset. When they do decide to eat, they want the most bang for their buck. They want a big meal that will sustain them for a while, so they can go back to conserving energy. This is why throwing an oversized swim bait or a giant 10-inch worm can be so effective, even when other anglers are struggling with 4-inch baits. Think about it from the fish's perspective. Chasing down a tiny little snack might burn more calories than the snack provides. But a big, hearty meal that swims right past their nose, that's an efficient use of energy. It's a worthwhile investment of their predatory power. Don't be afraid to go big when everyone else is going small. Let's look at another case study, the giant glide bait on a calm, quiet day. Conventional wisdom says to use subtle topwater baits like a spook or a popper, something that won't spook the fish. But what about a 12-inch, 3-jointed glide bait that looks like a small carp? Most guys would say it's too much. They'd say it will scare every fish in the area, and they might be right about the smaller fish. But the apex predator in that area sees something different. It doesn't just see a potential meal, it sees a rival. A big bass, pike, or muskie will absolutely attack and kill a smaller member of a rival species, not necessarily to eat it, but to eliminate competition for resources. That giant, slow-moving glide bait is the ultimate intruder. It's a big, dumb, easy target that is challenging the king of the spot. The resulting strike is often one of the most explosive you will ever see in fresh water. The element of surprise is your greatest ally here. The longer a fish lives, the more it learns to recognize and ignore common threats and non-food items. It has a mental catalogue of every popular lure style. Your job is to show it something that isn't in that catalogue. It's about presenting a puzzle the fish has never seen before. When a fish can't immediately classify something as food, threat, or harmless background object, it often defaults to a cautious investigation or, if the stimulus is strong enough, a preemptive attack. The hated lure forces this decision. Its weird action, loud sound, and offensive color scheme make it impossible to ignore and difficult to classify, often leading to that attack first, ask questions later response that we as anglers are looking for. You are essentially short-circuiting their brain. This strategy isn't just about color either, it's about action. Think about how most lures are designed to move. They wobble, they dart, they wiggle. They are designed to imitate something natural. But what about a lure with a truly erratic, unpredictable action? A chatterbait that suddenly darts off to the side, or a crankbait that hunts and changes direction for no reason. This unpredictability is another trigger. Baitfish, when they are fleeing, often move in erratic ways, but there is a pattern to it. A lure that is completely chaotic seems unnatural and therefore is something that draws attention. A big predatory fish might see this chaotic action as a sign of a wounded or disoriented creature, which represents an incredibly easy meal. It's an opportunity that's too good to pass up, even if the color is all wrong. Now, it's important to understand this isn't about randomly tying on any weird lure and hoping for the best. It's a calculated decision. The key is to be a contrarian. You need to think about what everyone else is doing on that body of water and then do the opposite. If everyone is fishing deep, slow, and natural, you should consider fishing shallow, fast, and loud. If the go-to color on the lake is green pumpkin, you should be throwing something like white, pink, or chartreuse. It's about identifying the norm that the fish have become conditioned to and then shattering that norm. Pay attention at the boat ramp. Look at what other anglers are tying on. Read the local fishing reports. Your hated lure should be the antithesis of whatever is popular at that moment. Let's consider the time of year. In the pre-spawn period, fish are often at their most aggressive. They are feeding up heavily and are extremely territorial as they prepare to move on to their beds. This is a prime time to use a loud, obnoxious, hated lure. A big, rattling, lipless crankbait burned over a shallow flat can trigger vicious strikes from fish that are setting up their territory. They aren't necessarily hungry, but they will not tolerate that loud, vibrating intruder near their future nesting site. Conversely, in the dead of summer, when fish can be lethargic, a huge, slow-moving lure presented right on their nose can be the only thing that gets them to react. It's such an easy, big meal that it's worth the minimal effort to open their mouth. This approach also requires a change in your own mindset. You have to be willing to fail. You are going to put on a lure that your brain is screaming at you is the wrong choice. You're going to feel silly for a little while. You might go an hour without a bite, but you have to have the confidence to stick with it. This is not a numbers game. You are not trying to catch 20 small fish. You are specifically targeting the 1 or 2 biggest, smartest fish in the area. It's a sniper's approach, not a machine gunner's. The goal is one perfect shot. When you commit to throwing the unthinkable, you are separating yourself from 99% of the other anglers on the water. You are presenting something that those trophy fish may have literally never seen before in their entire lives. Don't forget about weather conditions. A classic rule is to use loud, bright lures in muddy water and subtle, natural lures in clear water. Let's flip that. What happens when you throw a silent, natural-colored swim bait in muddy water? It might go completely unnoticed, but what about throwing that loud chartreuse spinnerbait on a bright, sunny day in crystal-clear water? The common fear is that it will spook the fish, and yes, it might spook the small ones. But for a big dominant fish, that loud, highly visible lure is a challenge it can see coming from 30 feet away. It gives the fish time to see it, get angry at it, and decide to intercept it with extreme prejudice. Sometimes, being highly visible and loud in a calm, clear environment is the most disruptive thing you can do. This concept applies across all species. A giant muskie that has seen every classic bucktail and bulldog ever made might absolutely crush a massive, jointed, saltwater-grade topwater popper that makes a sound like a flushing toilet. A big, wary walleye holding on deep structure that has ignored every live bait rig and jig dropped on its head might be triggered into a reaction strike by a flashy, vibrating blade bait yo-yoed aggressively right in its face. Trophy trout in a river that have seen a million tiny nymph patterns drift by might not be able to resist attacking a brightly colored, articulated streamer that looks more like a child's toy than a baitfish. The principle is universal. Educated, dominant predators are often triggered more by annoyance and intrusion than by a perfect imitation of their food. The retrieval of these hated lures is also key. You can't just cast it out and reel it in slowly. The retrieve needs to match the lure's personality. It needs to be disruptive. Burn that spinnerbait. Rip that lipless crankbait out of the grass. Make that glide bait slash and turn erratically. Create a commotion. You are trying to sell the idea that this thing is alive, it's out of control, and it's a problem that needs to be solved immediately. A steady, predictable retrieve allows the fish too much time to analyze the lure and decide it's fake. A fast, chaotic, unpredictable retrieve forces an instant, impulsive decision. You want them to strike it before their brain has a chance to tell them not to. So how do you start? Go through your tackle box, find the 3 weirdest, ugliest, or most ridiculously sized lures you own. The ones you've never had the guts to throw. Next time you're on the water and the normal stuff isn't working, dedicate 1 full hour to using only those lures. Don't give up after 10 minutes. Commit to it. Fish them with confidence, fish them aggressively, and fish them in your best spots. You are conducting an experiment. The worst that can happen is you don't catch anything, which was already happening. But the best that can happen is you hook into a fish that completely changes your understanding of what's possible. You might just discover that the lure everyone hates is the one that trophies have been secretly waiting for. Ultimately, this is about becoming a more thoughtful and adaptable angler. It's about understanding that there are no magic lures. Any lure is just a tool. The real skill is in understanding the fish's mood and the conditions, and then choosing the right tool to get the desired reaction. Sometimes the job calls for a delicate paintbrush, but other times, when you need to make a big impression, the job calls for a sledgehammer. The hated lure is your sledgehammer. It's a tool for breaking down the defensive walls of educated, pressured trophy fish. It's not about finesse, it's about forcing the issue. It's a bold strategy, and it doesn't always work. But when it does, the results are often the fish of a lifetime. It proves that sometimes the biggest rules in fishing are meant to be broken. So let's bring it all together. For years, we've been told to blend in, to be natural, to mimic. But on today's pressured waters, blending in just makes you part of the background noise that trophy fish have learned to ignore. The biggest takeaway, the real aha moment, is this. You don't always want to whisper to the fish. Sometimes you need to scream at them. The ugly, hated, or wrong lure isn't wrong at all. It's a specialized tool designed to bypass the fish's feeding brain and appeal directly to its raw, aggressive, territorial instincts. This changes everything. It means that no lure in your box is ever truly useless. It opens up a whole new world of possibilities and encourages you to be the one angler on the lake who is showing the fish something truly different. Thank you so much for watching. If this video made you rethink your approach, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that challenges the conventional wisdom. Now I have a question for you, and I want you to be honest in the comments. What is the one lure in your tackle box you've been too afraid or embarrassed to throw? And after watching this, are you finally going to give it a shot?